Do you love short stories? I do. I love reading them and writing them. As a fiction writer, I started out writing short stories, and my first short story was published long before I wrote my first novel. Vampire from Memphis was in a local anthology titled More Monsters from Memphis, and the anthology was put together by Elvis's estate attorney. I met him at the Poetry Society of Tennessee, and he invited me to submit a story to his anthology collection. The anthology came out, and my story was nominated for a Darrell Award, which was a total surprise. It's the first horror story I'd ever written, and I wrote it on my lunch hour when I was working for the Collierville Herald selling advertising. I had taken the job after college, and I went into the advertising side because I had student loans to pay, and the commissions would allow me to pay those off faster than writing for the newspaper would have. So I dashed off the story and I sent it to him, and he accepted it, and then the story was accepted. Now, he was a big promoter, and of course he was very well connected, being Elvis's estate attorney. So it wasn't long before he had a TV interview lined up for me and another of the finalists, and also a radio interview. So here I am. I have a short story published, and published pretty quickly, and now all of a sudden I have all of this promotional stuff going on, which was a little bit overwhelming at the time. I wasn't ready for it, I'll be honest. And so I went to the interview, and first let me tell you a little bit about this story. The story began with a headline that ran in the Collierville Herald newspaper, and the story was about the feral cats that were in the town square. It was overrun with cats, according to this story. And the animal control officer had issued a notice that everyone should stay off of the town square between certain hours that evening, and he would be taking care of these feral cats, which you might rightly assume meant possibly shooting them. It was in the news all over the place here in Memphis. So this was what started the story off. The vampire read the newspaper, and he was in Memphis, and after he read it, he said, well, I will take care of their little problem, and he hopped on the train and rode it from Memphis to Collierville. So that's why the title was Vampire from Memphis. So this is the story, and here I am. I've never been on TV before. I'm not used to being interviewed at all. I'm new to all of this. I've never had a story in an anthology before. And I'm on TV. It's first thing in the morning, and the anchor turns to me and says, so Deborah, what have you got against cats? Well, I don't have anything against cats, and that's the kind of question that will make your brain just freeze so that you can't think of an answer. So it wasn't the greatest experience, and I'm still not overly fond of the idea of having a TV interview, although the radio interview on WKNO with Keke Welton was quite fun, and I do enjoy radio, and I do enjoy being interviewed. So here I am with this story, and it was in the running for the Darrell Awards. It was a finalist. The Darrell Awards is put on by the Mid-South Con, and you can look that up and find more information on it if you're interested and you write horror that you might like to submit to that. So that was my first short story, first fictional short story published in an anthology. And it was before I had ever written a novel. Now my editor, my publisher, said, Deborah, you have a lot of romance in this story. I didn't realize it at the time, but everything I write has an element of romance. And this was already apparent with my first short story, which was meant to be horror. But of course, a vampire story lends itself to romance, and it was definitely leaning very heavily toward the romance side. I would find out when I tried to write a Western novel that the same thing would happen. And this continues to happen to this day. And this is why I know I am, without a doubt, a romance story writer. So now the anthology, More Monsters from Memphis, is out of print today. I'm not quite sure where the publisher is. So that story just remains there. You might be able to find it in a used bookstore if you are lucky. So I'm not sure how many copies are floating around. There weren't that many to begin with. So it's become a searchable item for my readers. And if you're lucky enough to find a copy, let me know, because that would just tickle me greatly to hear that you had. So that is the story of my first short story in an anthology. And this is Debra Parmley with a little chat about the author and the author's life. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel, my Beautiful Day YouTube channel, for more stories in the life of the author, and also for First Chapter Reads, where I read the first chapter of my stories. And follow me there, and thank you for listening.